phrase. Joining us now with reaction is Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway. Thank you for joining us, Kelly. Big news day, a lot going on in the world. Let's start with the Berlin attack. President-elect Donald Trump says he will fight Islamic terror. He used those two words together. Why did he specifically do that so soon?
Well, it's part of how he ran his campaign and won. People want tough, strong leadership. If you look at the polls, Eric, Americans feel less safe than they did 4 or 8 years ago. Many of them feel less prosperous as well. But, you know, in the last few years alone, we've had radical Islamic terrorists make its way onto our shores here. In San Bernardino, where the woman came through a fiancé K-1 visa. Most Americans didn't even know existed as an option. And, of course, down in Orlando this past May, the worst massacre of its kind in American history, 49 innocent lives being snuffed out by a man who was radicalized as an Islamist on the internet. And so we already know that this exists. We know that those who say that they're the JV team and they're no longer on the advance are just dead wrong. And you see it mostly in Europe. You see Nice and Paris, of course, and Brussels, and now apparently the market in Berlin, Germany. They're non-discriminatory in terms of when they attack, who they attack, but we know why they attack. Because they hate freedom-loving people and they're on a religious jihad.
So Kellyanne, yesterday the White House said probably terror or likely terror. Donald Trump came out and said, you know what, it's Islamic terror and we're going to call them out for it and we're going to stop it. And since then, ISIS has claimed credit for it. So Donald Trump was right.
He's right again. And I was on a show earlier where someone said, why does he get ahead of himself when he doesn't have the evidence? They said the same thing in San Bernardino about him. They said the same thing in Orlando. The man's instincts are correct, and he's right this time as well. By the way, he doesn't say that to be right. He says it to remind all of us, Eric, of who the enemy really is here. And you can't defeat them until you're willing to name them. And one of the untold stories of the election, frankly, is how much it mattered to many Americans that Donald Trump, as the Republican nominee, was willing to stand up so many times and call out radical Islamic terrorism, talk about the fact that the ham-handed way we got out of Iraq created this vacuum where ISIS and its progenitor groups were able to flourish. And he also, you know, you may recall in August or September, he came out with this pretty muscular 4 or 5 point plan to defeat them. So people can go and look it up. They can disagree with it what they want, but he talks about extreme vetting. He talks about all those countries that harbor and train and export terrorists where we have very little vetting process. You and I know that ISIS has promised to come in through the form of refugees, Syrian refugees and others. So they've made very clear that they're just getting started.
Sure. And Kellyanne, the other big story yesterday was the Russian ambassador being assassinated in front of the cameras. In the aftermath of that, let's talk about this, because President Donald Trump is going to walk into some sort of mess with this situation. You have Russia on one hand saying our ambassador is killed and we want someone to pay for that. Yet there are others, like former Ambassador John Bolton, suggesting that maybe this is some sort of plot by the Russians now to use this tragedy to get Turkey to get out of NATO. Now, it's a little wonky, though, but how is Donald Trump going to handle such a hotspot going forward?
Well, the way he handled this particular incident is he did two things, and they're both correct. He did what a leader does. First, he expressed outrage that an ambassador would be killed and that it violates every convention we can think of in an orderly society. Number two, he expressed condolences to the gentleman's family. That's what leaders do before they have all the evidence. And when he's president of the United States, he will make clear what his policies are. But I don't think the president-elect is going to speculate on the rest of it and come up with any type of theory other than what he sees in front of him, which is a cold-blooded murder of an ambassador in a foreign country that he's been serving. Talk
to me a little bit, Kellyanne, about the very, very strategic and important country, Turkey, for many reasons. Its location to Iraq and Syria, its access. ISIS has claimed that they're selling oil to Turkey. It's part of being in NATO. It wants to be in the European Union. What's Donald Trump's Turkey strategy?
Oh, I can't discuss that before he's the president of the United States. I know that he has discussed it and we're aware of it, but we're very respectful, Eric, until he is the president of the United States and the commander-in-chief starting on January 20th next month, that we have a president currently. Everything you just described about Turkey is 100% correct, and obviously the president-elect is aware of that and discussing that with his leaders. He's made very clear, too, that as soon as he assumes office, he will be convening those leaders, his Secretary of State, his Secretary of Defense, his National Security Advisor, and others. And he will be conferring about the best strategies moving forward in Turkey and elsewhere.
Okay, can we clear this up? Can we talk a little bit about, clearly Vladimir Putin, he's ticked off. He lost an ambassador. How is, has Putin reached out to President-elect Donald Trump on this assassination yet?
I'm not aware that he has.
Okay. All right, let's move on to this one. Now, there's been some back and forth going on about a phone call that occurred on election night. Now, initially, Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, suggested that Donald Trump had called him. Mr. Trump tweeted today, no, you got it wrong. He called me. Now, you have some intimate knowledge of this.
Oh, I do. Actually, it was the president-elect is correct. On Thursday, November 10th, which basically was a day after the wee hours of November 9th when he won, and that Hillary Clinton called to concede and congratulate him, I received a call from President Bill Clinton's chief of staff who asked if we could arrange a call to have President Bill Clinton congratulate the president-elect. The president-elect was in Washington, D.C. meeting with the current president on November 10th, that Thursday, as we'll all recall. And so we arranged the call. They had a great conversation. But it did go that way, and I saw in a tweet tonight that President Bill Clinton did say, Donald Trump and I agree on one thing, I did call him. It's fine. It may seem like a minor point to some, but it shows you the power of Donald Trump and his Twitter feed when he says, nope, I'm going to correct the record right here. You actually called me, which is true. I just think they're war of the word. It's not really a war of the word. It's just a departure in facts when it comes to what just happened in this election. I mean, Bill Clinton won the presidency twice because he knew how to win those important blue states in the upper Midwest and other places. His wife failed to do that, and she failed to do that not because Vladimir Putin told them to ignore Milwaukee, but because for some reason they took for granted Wisconsin because it had gone blue in every election since 1984. And so I think Bill Clinton, who knows politics so well, who is clearly the more gifted, masterful politician in his two-person household, he should know better than to be blaming Russian hacking or Jim Comey or Bernie Sanders. How dare he run in a primary? I mean, we're not enough of these excuses.
He went even further than Jim Comey. He did. He blamed the fake email scandal. Then he blamed Jim Comey. In this same comment where he said that Donald Trump had called him, in that same comment, he said Donald Trump knows how to get angry white males to vote for him.
Well, that's not the only group that, first of all, it's an insult. And I think Bill Clinton sounds like, in that case, a Trump voter these days. He seems pretty angry, white male, and that's too bad because he's a former president. We have enormous respect for him and for his legacy, as it were. But we also have to point out that Donald Trump had a very broad coalition in this win. He ran the tables among the same kind of Democratic Union households that Bill Clinton won and Hillary Clinton lost. He ran the tables among rural voters. Frankly, he got almost as much as Mitt Romney got among women, and he ran against the first female president. I would ask the Clintons, why didn't Hillary Clinton get 60 or 62% of the female vote? What's wrong with her running as the first female president? Why does she have this wicked gender gap among men where they disliked her, dismissed her, didn't want her to be president of the United States or commander-in-chief? They just trusted her. I mean, she underperformed among millennials. She couldn't bring together the Obama coalition, and she certainly couldn't bring together the Bill Clinton coalition. So it's pretty simple.
Those comments I would call deplorable and irredeemable by Bill Clinton. Is that okay to do that?
I would call them, yeah, it's something like that. But I would just call them dead wrong. And it's time to do, look, it's time for the Clintons to do what the Obamas have done, which is to open up the door and say, we are here to help you have a peaceful transition in our great democracy. We're only 1 month away today, Eric, from January 20th. And it's really time for the Clintons to tell all of their adherents, their protesters, this fanciful electoral strategy which failed, the hashtag. It's time for them to tell everybody to support this guy. So
let's tell the audience. I heard some news say, I heard a rumor today that Kellyanne Conway is going to move to Washington, D.C. Kellyanne, what are you going to do there?
Well, first I'm going to look for a house and some schools for my kids. We'll see how welcome the Trump people are in these schools, Eric. But I'm going to serve the president-elect and the vice president-elect in whatever capacity they would prefer me. And we've been talking about that. But either way, you can expect me in Washington, D.C. We're just getting started. This is a man in a big hurry to do great things. And I am all too humbled and honored to be part of that because he's going to make good on these promises of his first 100 days day plan. You see the activity and the energy already, just as President-elect and Vice President-elect, and it's a very exciting time. And I do want to give a shout out. I talked today on the phone for half an hour with Valerie Jarrett, and I really appreciate the kind of counsel that I'm getting personally and others on the team are receiving from President Obama's administration and its officials. It's very helpful for us to talk to people who are actually there.
All right, Kellyanne, we're gonna leave right there. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna miss you around the neighborhood. I used to drive around and see Kellyanne and her beautiful family.
Oh, we're keeping our house here.
We wave. Kellyanne,
we'll come and visit.
Thank you. I will. I'll come visit in D.C. Thank you very much. Coming up, after another stunning attack in Europe, the world is on edge, and President-elect Donald Trump is promising a new approach to fighting radical Islamic terror. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is here with reaction, and later.
To protect our country from terrorism and extremism, we will suspend immigration from regions where it cannot be safely processed or vetted.
Donald Trump is promising extreme vetting of refugees from countries with ties to terror. And now,